So the core practice we do at the Empathy Tent is empathic listening, and let me show this. So I'm going to give an overview of kind of how we use the empathy circle practice for empathic listening, and then after that, Lou will explain how we actually do it, and then kind of get the ball rolling for actually the practice of it. So here is going to do a screen share. So
can I suggest that you try to do this part in about 10 minutes?
Okay. I'll really whip through this. That was Joan's. I worked today. I really want to show. So Joan was also saying that do practice. So this was our Empathy Tent listening. The practice we do. It's kind of the core practice. And this is Lou actually facilitating at UC Berkeley Empathy Circle. The practice, it's the core practice of the Empathy Tent, and the intention is to build a culture of empathy, and this practice supports, personal well-being. It supports our team building, training. This is a practice for you just practice this, get better at listening to others. It's going to support holding constructive dialogue. It's also the basis for the conflict mediation we do, and it's the foundation for a lot of other steps, other creative practices that we do and initiatives. So for personal well-being, it's when we go into this environment, there can be a lot of anxiety, concerns, fears, and this just doing the empathy practice is really good for getting grounded, for your own personal growth, feeling heard and seen, and really to build up some presence, empathic presence, skill, and resilience. And this is, I don't know if you know Christian Picciolini. He just did had a program called Breaking Hate on MSNBC, where he's an ex-skinhead, and he kind of left the movement, and he brings other Nazis and so forth out of the movement. So anyway, this work is based on the work of Carl Rogers, who in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, used this empathic listening process, and it became sort of the foundation for the whole kind of therapeutic world. And NBC, some people mentioned that Marshall Rosenberg was a student of his, and there's video of Carl Rogers doing his empathic listening practice, and you can go on the internet and see that. And if you want a link to these videos, you can see it and just learn by seeing kind of a real expert who just did it for decades, did this empathic listening. He didn't create the process, he didn't create all of the process, but he really used it, practiced it, and kind of articulated it in his writings. And so the second thing we use is for team building. So this is our Empathy Tent team in Berkeley. And when we start a team meeting, we actually use the empathy circle practice to mutually listen to each other, to get grounded and connected, and kind of talk about any concerns. Like just the other week, we were at that rally, and we started off by the whole team having an empathy circle, kind of gets us all grounded and connected. We also use it online. Like usually when we have this meeting, we start with an empathy circle, and we also have an empathy training design team, a couple of them, and these are some of our design team members as well. So we start with the question, do you support building a culture of empathy? And always get sort of a thumbs up from everyone. There's the training. It's also for training for listening to others. And this was just, for example, sorry about it. I didn't want to get the volume on that. So wait a minute. Let me full screen. Okay, 1 second. So this was a video of us working with Sidewalk Talk, and it's a group that does listening. And in this, there's a video here, and you can see there's we had 10 people doing listening, and it was just an example of the Sidewalk Talk has started using empathy circles for their practice as well. And this was a deployment, a pop-up we did in Oakland. I won't show that. It also supports constructive dialogue. So this is Lou, for example, holding an empathy circle with students at UC Berkeley. And this is a way we get people together to have constructive dialogues that are maybe not conflict-based, but just people hearing each other more deeply. And this was event that Lou and I did with the Indivisible Berkeley. It's a group of, political group. And we did empathy circle practice with them. So they divided into small groups and they did empathic listening practice. And then Lou has a really great story of in his community in Petaluma that there was some kind of a conflict in the community, and he held an empathy circle cafe, basically, with I think like 30 people or so, and had them divide into small groups so they could talk about this community effort. And then it also supports conflict mediation, and this was someone from Patriot Prayer and the Berkeley, someone from Berkeley, a liberal. And we sat down with them, had them dialogue with each other in an empathy circle that's kind of facilitated and held by us. And it ended with them doing hugs. We did the same thing in LA, mediating dialogue between pro and anti-Trump groups, and did 6 of those. And each of those ended, after them doing empathic listening with each other, ended again with hugs. I would hug one side, then hug the other, and they say, "Oh, what the heck? I'll hug, the other side too." So I got them all to, mutually hug. We did an empathy circle with some. Oops, I don't want to show that, but we did empathy circle with Patriot Prayer founder Joey Gibson, and there's a video of that, but I won't show that. So it was a mediation with them. We have done other, have various projects. So we do, just for time, I won't go into showing that right now, that video. And we've also done more with bringing it into the politics. So this was our local assembly district, 15 candidates running for the state assembly. So we held 2 empathy circles with them using, this process we're going to show you. And they talked about how they're going to create a more empathic society if they win. And we had city council members from Oakland, Berkeley, and Richmond there. Lou and I talked to our congressman here, Mark DeSaulnier. So we're working at, bringing congressional representatives to talk with each other with an empathy circle. So that's sort of a project in the work. And it's also, I'm kind of thinking we need an Occupy, so an Occupy empathy. And that's actually how the empathy tent got started, was at Occupy Wall Street. This was the tent there in Berkeley. And, it was a 99 against the 1%. We were saying, no, we need 100% empathy. And it was kind of at that point, we didn't quite have the skills yet for really holding empathy circles, but it's something I think we could have turned the tide around, the divisions and the dysfunction that was at this encampment if we would have had these tools that we have now. So that, and so those are kind of how we use the empathy circle. We're using it in the empathy tent. And then you can also go deeper with the practice. So you can go into the focusing, which is a practice of getting deeper into the felt experience, into your own experience and others. And it has a big component of empathic listening to it. There's a nonviolent communication, which is also empathic communication or compassionate communication, which is really built on this process. And there's a lot of other kind of processes: dynamic facilitation, motivational interviewing, which is about dealing with internal conflicts in yourself. There's mediation, which is conflicts, interpersonal conflicts, and restorative circles. And you can also take it into the training, and in human-centered design, which is a design process which says if you design anything, you need to empathize with the users you're designing for and be aware of their felt experience with whatever product, service, or whatever you designed. So that was a super quick tour. Did I make it in 10 minutes?
You did.
Okay. So I don't want to overwhelm everyone, but I did think it would be helpful to just kind of introduce, like, this has a lot of benefit. It's the core of what we do. And now Lou's going to go into kind of explaining how we do it, and we'll jump into it.
Okay. Yeah, so I think the information that Edwin just presented kind of gives you a sense that there is a lot of experience here. We've been doing this, or he's been doing this for a very long time. So there's a lot of context that you're stepping into when we're learning this very focused practice. So I'm going to talk more about just the practice and how to actually do it. But the practice sits in a much larger context of trying to create a culture of empathy. So the empathy circle is a tool that we use, or a practice that we use, to help create a culture of empathy. And having been in doing communication, teaching communication and conflict resolution for a long time, what I find very attractive and effective about the empathy circle is that it provides enough structure for the conversation so that people hear each other and feel understood without a lot of training. So you don't have to have a lot of training on, like, how to be a good listener in order to make the circle work. And also, I just want to acknowledge that the purpose of the circle is to help create more understanding among the circle participants. So it's not for problem solving, really. So some people may say, well, what's the point of talking to these people? We need to do X, Y, Z. And the purpose of the circle really is to be heard and to understand others. So creating understanding is one of the first steps in shared problem solving, is having some understanding of each other. And the empathy circle is great for that. And some of the add-ons to the practice that Edwin was mentioning, some of those add-ons could then extend the process to something that does involve problem solving. But the empathy circle itself is really just for creating understanding. Okay, so having said that, so this is how the practice works. You get together with a group of people, somewhere between 3 and 5. I've done circles with as many as 10 people. That's kind of a lot. And you take timed turns in the circle to speak and have what you're saying be reflected back to you. So the circle starts with someone taking a turn and speaking for a set amount of time. It might be 3 minutes, it might be 5 minutes. Those are it's generally somewhere in there. And when if I'm starting, I select someone else in the circle to be my reflector. So they're going to reflect back what I'm saying. Everybody in the circle listens to me, but one person has the job of reflecting back what I'm saying. So I talk about, the circle might be on a certain topic, or it just might be whatever's up for me. And as I'm speaking, I pause periodically and I let the person who is reflecting back reflect back what they're hearing. And if they're not really hearing me properly, then I might say, well, no, that's not quite it. Or yes, you got this part, but you missed this part. And we kind of do that, speaking and reflecting, until the amount of time is up. And then assuming that I feel heard, I would say, thank you, I feel fully heard. And then the person who was the reflector becomes the speaker, and they select another person in the circle to reflect back what they're saying. And the listening, the speaking and the listening go around the circle like that, for as long as you want to go. And generally, you need to do this for about an hour for things to really kind of start to deepen. So this is one of the challenges, is that to really get a deep conversation going where people are seeing some new understanding of people maybe that they don't know or they're in conflict with, it takes a bit of time, somewhere between an hour and 2 hours. If you're working with, let's say, 4 or 5 people and each person is taking a 3-minute turn and reflection is going on in that time, then you can get around about 3 rounds. It takes about 3 or 4 rounds of everybody having a chance to speak for things to really start to deepen, usually. So it does take a bit of time. Usually the circle has at least one facilitator, and the role of the facilitator is really just to monitor the process, make sure people are following the process. And if somebody steps out of the process, like if the person who's reflecting back starts to answer what the person is saying, or object to it, or whatever, something other than reflecting back, then the facilitator would say, no, hold on, you'll get a chance to speak when you're the speaker, but right now your job is just to reflect back what you're hearing. Another thing the facilitator might do is, if the reflector is having trouble reflecting back and they make 2 or 3 attempts and the speaker is saying, no, that's not it, no, you're not hearing me, then the facilitator might say, well, let me try to reflect back what I'm hearing, and help facilitate the understanding happening. Let's see. I think that pretty much explains it. Are there any questions about it before we start? Edwin or Bill, do you feel like I left anything out?
Yeah, I would say, when you're speaking, pause periodically to let the person reflect back. And if you're the listener and the person is sort of going on, like you think, oh, I won't be able to remember what I'm hearing, or they're kind of jumping from topic to topic, and you can say, oh, if you could just wait a minute, let me reflect what I'm saying. So you can sort of break in to just reflect back what it is you're hearing.
And that's another thing that the facilitator does, is if the speaker is going on for a bit and the listener is too polite to say, hold on a sec, wait, let me reflect back what I'm hearing so far, then the facilitator can break in and say, because this is something that doesn't typically happen in normal conversation, where the person who's listening says, hold on, can you wait a minute, let me tell you what I'm hearing so far before you go on. Most people are not skilled enough to do that, or have enough emotional strength to interrupt like that. So the facilitator can do that for them. Yes, Bill.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I'm learning a lot from Lou. He's been doing this, and so I really, as far as the hour and the deepening, I see that. But I also want to say, in the arena where you're out in a park or someplace like that, you don't always have the chance to do that. And I just wanted to emphasize, in my own personal experience, how important that has been. For instance, at the family separation, there was a man in a wheelchair who had post-traumatic stress syndrome. And so he saw what clearly is, I think Sam would agree, child abuse by the separation. It's child abuse, reaction attachment disorder, established in 1945. And so he just wanted to say that, we who have been abused, have that post-traumatic stress reaction, when we see that on TV, when we see that. And that was very powerful. And, and this was a man, if you looked at him, wasn't being heard by a lot of people, and now you're hearing it. And so it's, it's not that, it's not the deepness, but it definitely, I think, has value.
So if I get what you're saying, Bill, you're saying even if the empathy is only happening for a short period of time, significant things can happen. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I feel heard. Thank you.
All right, great. Well, I just wanted to get clarity. I wasn't sure that I understood fully what you were saying, but so.
Right.
Okay. All right, any other questions before we start? Okay. So why don't we do 3-minute turns? Is that what you want to do, Edwin?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
I set it up. I have the time. I can do
You
the
have a timer?
timekeeping.
Okay. I'll be the first reflector, just as a demonstration. And who would like to be the first speaker?
And our topic is, it's about starting the empathy tent in Portland, or anything that's alive in you is the theme.
I'll give it a shot.
Okay.
No one else is going. Cheers.
Okay, so Tony, you're wanting to start, and so normally you would pick someone to listen to you, but I'm going to do it first. So.
I choose you, Luke.
Okay, I'll be happy to listen to you.
So what's alive in me with regard to this project is at the moment is that I feel quite excited about it, and accompanying that is some feelings of nervousness surrounding feeling like I don't have the skills to contribute to the process as fully as I'd like to.
So if I'm hearing you right, you're feeling both excited and nervous, and the nervousness is around wondering if you have adequate skills to do this.
Yes, and yeah, I can kind of picture myself coming to one of the events and being part of the tent, and there's some worry there that people may come looking for empathy or understanding, and that I won't have the practice or the skill set to provide them what they're hoping for from me and from us.
So you can imagine it happening. Imagine that excites you, actually. Imagining being there with the tent and people coming and really wanting to provide something of value to them, make a contribution. But again, you're a little worried that, it won't have as much impact as you're hoping.
Yes, that sounds right. And yeah, and there's a bit of fear there too. I would say that perhaps I'd be in a situation that was more volatile or potentially physically or emotionally violent than I'd be able to respond to calmly or empathically. So that comes up for me a bit as well.
So another thing you're imagining is a situation that's explosive, or maybe, with a lot of conflict, and you wonder whether you would be able to stay calm and or respond to it in an effective way.
Exactly. But overall, despite those kind of conflicting feelings, it seems like I don't know, I feel very honored and kind of there's a certain serendipity of having found this group of people and this practice, and kind of being having some Edwin and you all having walked this path a bit before I came along, and feels comforting. And yeah.
So I think I'm understanding that, despite the trepidation that you feel, you're also feeling comforted by the fact that there are people who have been doing this, and that you feel somewhat uh, uh, um, what's the word, that there's some kind of synchronicity happening in the fact that you connected with this group, and that makes you feel like this was meant to happen, or you were meant to do this, and and that you feel honored that this is happening, and I imagine that's part of your excitement too.
Yeah, it's very well put, Lou, and thank you. I feel heard.
Thank you. Okay, so let's see. So Sam, would you listen to me?
Yes.
Thanks. So I'm really excited being here with so many new people today. Just seeing your faces and hearing you introduce yourselves and talking about wanting to learn this practice and go out into the public and create spaces for people listening to one another. Just really, I'm so happy and excited about that. So I'm grateful that you're all here.
Yeah, your face just kind of lit up when you said that. So you're just feeling really excited about seeing all the new faces and seeing this movement kind of grow. And you're very excited about that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and I have so much respect and gratitude for Edwin and how long he's been doing this and how hard he works at reaching out to people and finding people and organizing, inviting people in, and innovating and being creative and trying new things all the time to find ways to make this process grow and get out there and to build a culture of empathy. And I just so respect that and admire that his tenacity and his commitment and creativity. So I'm feeling that strongly too, because all of you are here.
Yeah, so there's a lot of gratitude, and I guess I feel like even the sense that none of this would be happening right now if it weren't for Edwin and all of the hard work and creativity that he's put into it. And so you're feeling really grateful for that and connecting that with your excitement as well.
Yes, and I admire it. I need to do more of that myself.
So you're also wanting to be more a part of that as well, and help getting this culture of empathy out there.
Yeah. And I have similar feelings actually towards Bill. He's been doing this with us for, I guess, maybe 4 months now or 5 months, something like that, and also has a lot of great ideas and creativity and trying things and inventing new things. And so there's a lot of it's inspiring to see that kind of creativity and commitment. And so I'm feeling that too.
Yeah, so there's an appreciation for Bill as well for what he's contributed, and that's also igniting in you the desire to do more yourself.
Yes, thank you. That's my time, right, Edwin? Yeah. So thank you. I feel fully heard. Thank you for listening.
Okay. I will choose Bill.
I'm listening.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
There's a part of me that almost feels a little nervous about participating in this. I have to say, like, Lou, when you selected me as the listener, there was this part of me that was kind of like, oh, I don't know if I can do this or if I'm going to forget something you said or not quite reflected back. And so, and that also reminded me of sort of what Tony was sharing a little bit too, of just having some doubts about, you know, my skills, but also feeling committed to wanting to develop those skills and get better at that. And I'll just pause for a second.
Sure. So I think what Tony said rang a bell for you, and also what Lou said also kind of affected you, and you also were a bit trepidatious about your skill set and how effective you might be, and also could you do the practice. At the same time, there was this sense, what I'm sensing is a sense of challenge and a sense of sort of like the rightness of the effort, you know, the emotional feeling that I'm getting, and also your reaction to what you see in the world around you. And that excites you.
Mm. Yeah, and like similar to Tony, I'm almost feeling like I was very drawn to this movement, the empathy tent movement, and I can just see it as a benefit to myself, but also to the world at large. I wanted to say earlier that in honing my own skills, I can see how that would really help me in my practice as a school social worker. Something I've felt that I've really needed practice in is really fully listening and being able to summarize and reflect back what I heard, rather than thinking about, okay, how's this fit in with my understanding of this person, and, you know, like getting rid of the thinking part and just being with the person and fully hearing them. So that's something I want to practice in myself.
So I'm hearing that, you know, with this challenge that you feel and you're excited about, you also feel a sort of sense of kismet about this group, about a sense of destiny. It seems to match what you're feeling internally about what should be going on, what people should be doing. That's what I get a sense. And then there's this also sense of anticipation of learning the skills, and also anticipation that these skills would be then applicable to your job and be very effective.
Yep. Thank you. I feel heard.
Anything else, or okay? All right. All right. You can improve your handwriting there, Edwin.
I'll hold this up. It says 5 minutes, but I have it.
Right.
It's really 3.
Okay. So that's, I think, what Lou and also I will share my appreciation for Edwin about, is that he's always prepared.
Who are you speaking to?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you got to pick it.
You know, here I am. Okay. Let's see. Wilderness.
Sure.
Are you listening to me?
I'm ready to listen.
Okay. So that's my what I share with Lou, is that Edwin lives this and breathes this, and he's always prepared. He's got something else, you know, and that little snippet I think is very symbolic of the sort of thought that Edwin puts into this movement. So I'm very appreciative of that. And also Lou, who I am really learning a lot from. You know, as far as the, you know, really drilling down on the technique, and I'm enjoying it, and I'm sure I'm going to be learning a lot more. So I'll stop there, and you can.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're very appreciative and grateful of both Lou and Edwin, and particularly Edwin for his humor, and Lou for his hard work and preparedness.
Mm-hmm. And I'm also appreciative that you know, of all these, you know, your participation, meaning everyone, of course, including you, because I believe the empathy circle experience is transcendent in a very, very deep way. And that if people actually practice that, that is, as Lou said, the foundation, the first step we need to do to create a society of empathy.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're appreciative of everyone who's here, because it seems like everyone will have something to offer and can expand the movement of empathy.
Mm-hmm. And I also feel that I share your moment that there's kismet. If you look, there are two things that are missing in our society. And one, I think, is the listening. And then the second, I think that people in a very basic way are very, very lonely because of the lives that we have to lead in our society. And I believe some people believe that there's a thin veneer of civilization, there's a savage underneath. And what I found in special education, that the rage that we see is the absence of love, the feeling of absence of that. And so therefore, when we had a situation, we said, well, what's the communicative intent? What are they trying to tell us? And when we figured that out, the violence went down.
Lack of listening and an increase in loneliness. And you feel like there needs to be more emphasis on love.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound right?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Wilderness. I feel heard.
Thank you. Oh, and then now I go?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer, would you be willing to listen?
Sure. Could I possibly have you turn up your microphone a little bit? I can't hear you as well as everyone else.
Let me see.
I can just hear you, but it's like if
Does
you
that
can.
make a difference?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it does.
Okay. Yeah, y'all are louder to me now too. Okay. All right. So I feel, well, I'm very tired today. So I'm doing my best to be as present as I can be. And I feel really happy and grateful to be here. And I do feel tired. I feel like the smoke, and for anyone who's in Portland knows it's been incredibly smoky, and that's been exhausting. And there's just a lot going. I'm really busy in my life right now.
So I'm hearing that well, first of all, you're being very open and honest about your feelings with the tiredness that you feel, and the environment, partly because of the environment you're in. So
Yeah. So I guess I feel really happy to be doing the empathy circle. This is really interesting to me because I have an empathy buddy in another program that I'm doing for an NVC program. And when we work together, we do very differently, where each person just talks for 10 minutes and then the person reflects, and with like no interruptions, no nothing. And then at the end, the person reflects. So it's really fun to do this in a different way.
So I'm hearing that you're able to contrast this in a pleasing way with another experience you're having with NVC.
Yeah, I like it. It's nice to because it feels very different. So it's interesting. And this is more like, I guess, what you might experience in day-to-day dialogue, versus sitting and saying like, versus always sitting and listening to someone for 10 minutes straight. And I think, however, I've had a really good experience with that because it first it was like kind of terrifying, and I was always waiting to be interrupted or waiting for someone to comment or say something. And then as I got used to it, it became really powerful to just know, to just have the freedom to talk for that long.
I'm hearing that NVC has given you the freedom to speak your piece for 10 minutes at a time and to know that you're being heard fully. But then again, this practice that we're involved in with the Empathy Circle is, you believe, more, perhaps more real life in its, in the smaller segments of time involved.
Kind of. I don't think it's MVC particularly. It's just a different style of listening. And it's mostly just that it's fun to try both styles. I think they both bring really different things. Like this is just feels like being heard in a totally different way, but I like them both.
Okay. So you're able to appreciate both and find the merits in both approaches.
Yeah. How am I on time, Edwin?
It's 3 minutes. I don't see it, but
Oh, I have 3 minutes left.
no, it's used it up. It's 3 minutes.
Oh.
It's done.
Okay, then I feel heard.
I hold it up when a 3 minute mark is hit.
Oh, but I don't see you unless you make noises.
Okay, I'll make noise from now on.
So Wilderness, there's a button in the upper right-hand corner of your screen that says Gallery View, and if you click that, then you could see everyone at once.
Oh, I don't have that.
You don't?
No, I don't.
Are you on a phone?
Yeah, I'm on an Android.
Okay, maybe that's why.
Okay.
On a smaller screen, I guess they don't do that.
Well, Wilderness, do you see like an icon that has like 9 little squares?
No.
No? Okay.
I think I can't. I think maybe I cannot do it. Which is okay.
So Zoom has 2 modes. One mode is speaker mode, where the speaker is full screen and who's ever speaking they switch to full screen. And the other is gallery view, where regardless of who's speaking, you have a little small square of each person who's in the conversation. So it's more like...
I'll have to look around for it, but from what I can see, it looks like that's not an option for me on the phone view.
Okay.
That's okay.
Okay. So let's see. I'll pick Tony to reflect me.
Great.
Okay. Well, it's interesting that people talk about kismet or serendipity, because I've been feeling that as well. With this group, I've had a lot of I don't know how to quite say it. Sort of a bursting of heart energy this summer, and so it feels like this is a wonderful group to have found right now. It feels that's a way to bring that out into the community. I work with a lot of people. I work in a huge bookstore. A lot of people coming through every day, and I share that with everyone. But I've been feeling like there's maybe something more I could be doing with this in the community. There's a lot of misunderstanding in the world, so I'm really happy to have found you all.
Neat. It sounds like you resonate with what a few of us have said about this feeling like it's coming at the right time and it's what we need. And not only that, it sounds like you're finding ways to integrate what you're feeling and kind of the serendipity of finding this group and ways that you can use it in your everyday life and with your work.
Yeah, recently moved from a very heart-centered alternative medicine field into a fairly head-centered intellectual field, and sometimes I feel fairly isolated within that, but I know that I'm needed there too. So I feel that I'm needed where I am, but yet the contrast reminds me that maybe there's some important work I can do in a larger sphere. So I'm excited to do that.
Yeah, it sounds like perhaps there was a part of you that worried that you left a field that you felt more connected to immediately, and that your new one is, like you said, more head than heart. But it sounds to me like you're finding a way to incorporate heart nonetheless, and that perhaps that part of you may be even more necessary in an area where head seems to dominate.
And yet I'm guessing that I'll need to keep my wits about me in an empathy circle. I'll need to keep my boundaries straight and others' boundary, be mindful of others' boundaries. So I'll have to be more than just open, more than just warm. I'll have to hold the space in some way. And it's a little daunting to think about that and what that might mean. I'm sure it will be easier than it sounds. I'm doing that with people all the time and not thinking about it. But it crosses my mind that it might be a real challenge.
Yeah, it sounds like you're considering discernment being necessary here, that while of course vulnerability and sharing is a part of what we do, that respect for boundaries and what others might feel as private is necessary to be mindful of that as well.
That was 3 minutes.
I feel heard.
So we just completed a round, although I didn't. So normally, and I kind of missed this as a facilitator, I would have directed Jennifer to select Edwin because he was the one person in the circle that hadn't spoken yet. But I missed that. So now, Tony, it's your turn to speak. So second round because you're having a chance to talk, and I would ask that you pick Edwin so that you have a chance to speak.
Sure. Edwin, would you be willing to listen to me?
Yep.
I have to confess that at this moment I'm not feeling much, as funny as that sounds. I feel quite still, and I think largely because it's just kind of humbling to be in a group where people are sharing quite openly about some challenges, but also there was a lot of joy and appreciation that was talked about, and that was fun for me because I think of empathy as largely something provided for someone in crisis, so to speak, and to see that you can reflect positivity back to someone was really enjoyable.
Okay, so initially you thought, well, there's not a lot coming up. You're just noticing kind of being in a state of stillness, but something an insight that came up is that you've seen empathy as something you do for someone in crisis. You can see you can actually do it for someone who's having positive feelings as well. So it's like kind of a new insight.
Definitely, and as I'm kind of connecting that back to what I shared in the first round, there's a part of me that feels a little more at ease with joining or potentially facilitating a future empathy circle, and knowing that while it's likely some challenging things will be talked about, we'll also get to reflect back some of our potential accomplishments or things that people are feeling in their sharing that are positive. And that sounds much more exciting than it does nerve-wracking.
Okay, so initially you're feeling sort of some anxiety about doing empathic listening, and you're thinking, oh, it's going to be just people in distress, and you're realizing that you can empathize with people having positive experiences too, and you're actually feeling a little bit more at ease now about taking part in empathic listening for others.
Yeah, that's definitely true, and a nice connection for me outside of this group too. And I've been reading Listening Well for the last several days, and trying to practice some of the methods suggested in there. And I think again, it's been a bias towards trying to reflect feelings that were, quote unquote negative, and realizing that there were opportunities to reflect positivity, and again, feeling excited to move forward with that new knowledge and to see more opportunities to practice now with that kind of breadth or new range.
Mm-hmm. So you're also reading Listening Well, so learning from there and just seeing that you can reflect back on the positivity. It's sort of this full range of human experience. It's just not one. And so you're just maybe feeling some excitement about the possibilities there.
That's right. And I don't know.
3 minutes.
I was just about to say, I feel heard. So thank you, sir.
Okay, great. So I'll speak to Lou.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking in terms of Portland, getting the empathy team up, and I just saw that there was it was just a rally there a couple weeks ago, and there was someone who's a Bernie supporter was holding an American flag to stand, advocate for, for America, or just anti-fascist. He was actually on the anti-fascist side, and he got beat up by Antifa, actually knocked out. So I just was something that gave me some ideas for some actions to do.
So you're just reflecting on the Portland rally that happened a week ago, and the fact that there was a Bernie supporter there that was holding a flag, and that person got attacked by Antifa and knocked out, and that seeing that and thinking about that gave you some ideas about wanting to do something there.
Yeah, and I thought if we had an empathy team there in a tent, that what would be, like a strategy would be to set up the empathy tent near where that person got knocked out and say, we're doing an occupation, we're not moving here until Antifa comes and takes part in an empathy circle. And we try to reach out to the person that was knocked out and see if that person would be willing to take part in an empathy circle with, with the people that knocked him out, or, whatever. So it was just kind of sort of an idea that got me kind of excited about like a step to do. Just some kind of an action that could be done in an empathic way in this environment.
So the idea that you're having about that is to set an empathy tent up at the spot where somebody was hurt, where some harm happened,
mm-hmm.
and to invite actually the participants, the person who was harmed, and maybe the person who did it or someone from that group to come together and to try to listen to each other.
Yeah, and it could even
be not only effective but like symbolic in some way.
Yeah, and it could actually be the community could come together. Like, let's have empathy circles to discuss how do you feel about this too. So that was so anyway, my mind just starts thinking about sort of strategies for what we could do. So the other thing real quick was I've heard some nervousness about, taking action. And for one thing, doing the empathy circles, I already see some ease just in a few minutes of doing the empathy circle practice, creating some ease. But I think there's really something for just learning by doing. Like, don't feel you got to be an expert at this. You know, it's like out of the human-centered design community, they say fail early, fail often, because you succeed faster. So I see a lot with, like in the mediation community and the NVC, different communities. It's like, it's forever practicing. You know, it's like practice, 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 and they never do anything. They don't come out and do anything. So I'd rather see you come out and fail than, you know, and just learn by doing than, you know, just forever practicing. But practice is good too. So I'm not against it, but, you know, really a bias towards action. Just take some kind of action. And don't worry about so much about the consequences, I guess.
So the things I'm hearing there are, one, as far as your idea of what to do in Portland, that you might have more than one circle, invite people, a bunch of people into circles and have it be more of a community kind of thing. And then the second is about the balance of practice versus practicing versus doing, and that you're recommending a bias towards doing, because it's fine to fail. You learn a lot from failing, and if you start doing, you might actually not fail. That, yeah, even in the practice that you see people doing here, having heard their concern about whether they have skills or not, you know, you're seeing a lot of good listening happening.
Yeah, some ease developing. So I feel heard. That was my 3 minutes. Thanks.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's see. I'll go with Jennifer. Would you listen to me?
Sure.
Okay. So what's alive in me? So I would say, I would also say that I've heard a lot of skillfulness in the listening that I've heard in this group so far. So despite people's concerns about, you know, not being skillful or not being, you know, being nervous and not being able to remain present to listening, you know, I've heard a lot of excellent listening. So I just want to say that.
All right. I'm hearing that you are appreciating our qualities despite our fears, our stated fears to the contrary.
Yes. And the other thing I'm remembering is, for doing this kind of demo or introduction to the circle, that a good thing to do, which we didn't do, is to do a little demonstration. A couple of the sessions like this that I've done, not online, but more face-to-face, I usually do, after explaining it, I usually do a demo with someone. So I have someone, you know, speak, will you take a turn speaking? And then I reflect back what they're saying, but I usually do it poorly. So, you know, they say something and then I give them advice, or I tell them they're overreacting, and then the audience always laughs because they recognize immediately that, you know, that's not what we're talking about, doing that kind of a thing. So it's a good way to kind of get people to see what we're talking about and kind of what we're not talking about, and it kind of lightens people up, because they realize that they know actually that what we're doing is not giving advice or not judging what people are saying or telling them how to feel or something like that. We're really just reflecting back, you know, what we're hearing a person say.
So I'm hearing that you usually take a slightly different approach, showing to modeling this and showing its opposite, what we're not doing, so that people understand that they intuitively know how to do this, and have understood the material that you've presented. But I believe you said that you like what we're doing tonight as well.
Yeah. I mean, so for instance, like, nobody has actually said to someone, well, no, that isn't quite what I meant. This is what I meant. You know, you're not really understanding me. Nobody really has said that. So people are feeling pretty understood, or understood enough that they're willing to say, yes, that you're understanding me.
Okay. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that we're basically able to compassionately speak to each other already about what we are, that we're hearing each other and being heard.
Yeah, actually, what I'm saying is, what I'm hearing is people reflecting people back accurately, not a lot of correction.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want a reflection on that, or feel heard?
What'd you say?
Or did you want a reflection for that last piece?
I did, actually.
Oh,
Could you just reflect back that last piece?
Okay. So what I'm hearing, I think, is that people are reflecting each other well and understanding each other.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, I'll just add this. You don't have to reflect this back, but I just want to add something else I do in the demo is when the person says something to me, I deliberately reflect it back inaccurately. So they can say, no, that's not what I'm saying, and then they give a correction, and then I say, oh, okay, now I'm understanding. So you demonstrate what that looks like. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay.
It's your turn now.
Let's see. I guess, Wilderness, would you reflect back to me?
Mm-hmm. Gladly.
Okay. Let's see. I know this isn't the forum to ask a question, but I'm interested to know if others are, if others here are generally people who feel bounced out of raging discussions. Not that people who are part of empathy work are who can't take a stand or wouldn't take a stand or wouldn't have a strong opinion or be part of a debate. But what I'm really getting at is that I many times feel as if I'm pretty bounced out and not judging others as much as I see and hear other people judging each other. And so this feels like a good fit for me in that way, in that I'm interested in dialogue and people finding common ground, and I don't have the strong feelings that one side is right and the other side is wrong, so that I think that'll be good for this work.
Yeah, so it sounds like you often feel bounced out because you're looking for more depth and intimacy in dialogue, and also that you feel like you have the ability to kind of stand a solid ground when people are arguing. I think that's what you were saying. I think that's what you're meaning. Like, you can hear two different sides of a story and kind of take them both in equally.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think that's pretty accurate. And sometimes that does not sit well with people who have really strong opinions and want to debate. Sometimes it's not valued, and so it's nice to be part of a group in which it's I would think an important skill or important ability to stand apart from raging opinions, to be able to see all the sides and identify with everyone, or people on both sides of a dispute. So I'm feeling grateful to have found people doing this work.
Okay, so you feel like you have the ability to see sorry, to be that person who can listen empathically, and that you don't see that as a trait that everyone can do, and you feel grateful that you're seeing that here and that you get to share that with other people who also want to do that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I didn't mean that I'm special in that way, but I just meant that that many times it doesn't feel as if this, and that's what we're talking about, building a culture of empathy. It doesn't feel like the culture really rewards people who are empathetic with all the sides. That is seen as maybe a sign of weakness or a lack of mental clarity or some kind of failing, really.
So you feel like in general society, empathy can be seen as a weakness?
Yes.
Mm.
I feel heard.
Thanks. Okay. Sam, are you still here?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Would you be willing to listen?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. It's interesting. I feel I'm someone who talks about my feelings a lot, and I generally like that's what comes up for me first in sharing is just like how I'm feeling like in my body. That also could be because I have chronic illness, so I tend to kind of like go there first. Like, how's my body feeling? How's my brain feeling with how I'm being right now? But yet, I feel somewhat hesitant to share that in in this group because I feel like it should be more about I should be reflecting more on like the tent itself and stuff like that.
So there's a part of you that, speaking about your feeling state comes very naturally to you, and you think it's partly because of having dealt with chronic illness, which has put a lot of focus and attention on your own body and feeling state. And there's a part of you that kind of wants to bring more of that into this discussion, but then another part feels like, well, maybe this should focus more on the empathy tent movement, and feelings aren't what this is about.
Yeah, and I think that sounds really accurate. And then also, I think that the reason it's coming up for me kind of a lot is because I'm because of what's coming up for me, I'm like having a lot of brain fog, and I'm like really doing my best to follow everything that's going along, and I'm like not actually doing it to the ability that's like I feel frustrated at my ability to really not kind of keep up mentally right now.
So there's a part of you that's kind of almost criticizing yourself a little bit in your ability to listen as empathically as you'd like to, because you're recognizing that the brain fog that you're feeling right now is really getting in the way of that for you.
Yeah, and it's hard to explain because I'm very, very, like when I'm actually listening, I'm totally there and I'm totally hearing what the person's saying. And then when I actually go back to formulate the words to reflect, it's hard for some reason. And that's not something that I'm really used to in other instances when I've done this. So that feels, frustrating.
So maybe there's kind of like a new challenge for you here, and you're noticing that there seems to be some block in going from the listening part to the actually reflecting back part, and you're not quite sure how to deal with that, and it's frustrating.
I guess I get worried about how it might be perceived.
Okay, so the concern is more how others will perceive you in your ability to reflect back that isn't to your satisfaction where you're
Right now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would want, I would feel sad if anyone felt like I wasn't giving my all. Yeah.
So you're worried that because of your difficulties right now, it would result in somebody feeling less heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's 3 minutes.
Okay. I can stop there then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have you gone twice, Sam, yet?
This is my second time.
Okay, so well, if you want to go ahead, and then we'll end with that.
Okay. So I'm.
And who you're selecting?
Oh, right. Tony.
I'm ready.
All right. So I'm kind of contrasting this similar to what Wilderness was doing in terms of like this experience versus what other similar things that you've done, similar processes. And so right now I've just been kind of taking all of this in and contrasting it with something else that I've done and participated in through something called IFS. It stands for Internal Family Systems. And it's, you've noticed me using like the parts terminology a lot because it takes that understanding of people, and that when they speak, they're speaking from a part of themselves, and it's not necessarily the whole of who they are. And so I've done an online interactive group with IFS, and it's just interesting to notice the similarities between this and that, and the differences between this and that, and kind of like Wilderness, I'm noticing the benefits of each.
It sounds like you're kind of applying this new learning and method to an old learning and method to kind of find a way to appreciate both, and perhaps find the connection between the two, how they might be integrated together.
Yeah, and I feel like with the IFS process, there wasn't so much of the reflection happening, but there was very much of a responding. It's hard to explain. Like somebody would speak and share something that was alive for them in that moment, and then somebody else would comment about how they were reacting to that person, how they felt towards that person as they were speaking. And so it was more like looking at your internal state of like, okay, I'm like, when there's a lot of appreciation being expressed, for example, like you might say, oh, when you said XYZ, I had a warm feeling in my heart. And, so it was like a way of connecting to a person by sharing how they impacted you. So I don't know, it's different, but similar. I don't know. I'm trying to integrate. You're right. I'm trying to integrate these two somehow.
I can see just in how you're speaking that there's almost like a joyful frustration that's happening, where you're, it sounds like you're, as you mentioned, trying to find a way that these two fit together into kind of a unified model. And it sounds as though you haven't gotten there yet, but it's almost like you're enjoying that process of how might these both exist simultaneously for me.
Thank you. I feel heard.
That was 3 minutes. Yeah. So, okay. Well, we want to keep us on track. We're going for about an hour and a half today. Sometimes we go for 2 hours. But So let's see. Maybe we could just go around. Like, how was that for everyone? Just starting with Jennifer. How just kind of a wrap up. How did it work for you with the listening and everything?
Yeah, I really appreciated that we did this because I was pretty trepidatious about it, but it's fairly natural. I mean, I was worried that the reflecting language would be really stilted and weird, but it was actually pretty decent. I mean, it's pretty normal, or was normalized during this. It didn't take very long to feel okay with that. Because I've never done this work before. So I appreciated that we took the time to do this tonight, and just in the second meeting, at least my second meeting. I feel as if I'm that much more comfortable with the whole process now, and it feels really good.
Okay, thanks, Bill. You're muted.
Sorry. I was very appreciative. I find that the new people come in, but the quality of the experience stays the same, and that just gives me more confidence in it. And it was great to see how people just kind of eased into doing it. And the other thing that I just want to say real quickly about Edwin and what he's doing here is that he's taken it out of the academic. Sometimes training's great and you can learn a lot, and I'm not against that, but this listening is your birthright. And sometimes training can separate you from that. Oh, you can't do it until you get there. And I think that can work against you. So I just wanted this is another example of just watching people enjoy themselves listening. It was great. It's your birthright. Let's spread it.
Okay, thanks. Tony?
Yeah, you really said what I was just about to, Bill. To be honest, that was my experience. That while I've always enjoyed listening and learning, this felt like a venue wherein that was the sole purpose of what we were doing, and that felt really kind of fun and exciting, and was just a new depth of listening and kind of an enjoyment of it that I don't know that I'd experienced quite to that extent before. So thanks for that.
Okay, Wilderness, thanks.
Yeah, I thought it was wonderful. It's really sweet to both watch people being heard and like seeing, the joy. You can just watching people's expressions when, someone gets them and understands what they're saying, and then you can hear it in their voice, just sort of like a sweet relief of like, oh, I've been heard. So I really appreciate that, and it's fun to hear what's on everyone's minds, and to hear people speak sometimes, I think, more deeply than they normally would, because they know that we're literally here just to listen. Kind of giving the freedom to be vulnerable and safely.
Okay, thanks. Sam?
Yeah, I was very grateful to be able to participate in this, and I am one that learns by doing. Like, I have to actually do it. I've watched some of the empathy circles that you've facilitated online, but now that I've actually done the process myself as a participant, I'm seeing the value in it even more and feeling even more excited to kind of like get it out there and use it and just expand on that. So really happy to have done this.
Great. Thanks, Lou.
I'm feeling really excited because I think there's a wonderful group of people. My judgment is you're very skilled. This is a group of very skilled people. A lot of self-awareness and a lot of skillfulness in your listening and reflecting. I think, and one of the great strengths of this process is that you actually don't have to be as self-aware and as skillful as you guys are for this to work. That even when you're with, let's say, a group of people, and they really haven't had any experience of this kind of thing, and all they're doing is kind of saying back what they heard the person say, just the word, like reflecting the words back. That still has an impact. It has the impact of slowing the conversation down, which means people hear themselves and other people hear them more just by slowing things down. And the other thing that happens is because speakers or listeners become speakers and they have to choose someone else in the circle. So not the person's, the vector of conversation is going not back and forth. So because the other thing we had here was not a lot of contention. It's not like we're discussing something, we're disagreeing with each other a lot. So when you're in a circle where there is potentially disagreement, the vector of conversation is not going back and forth between two people where they're responding to each other. So those are some of the attributes of the structure that really promote good listening and understanding, even when there isn't a lot of skill in the people. And so I'm very excited. So I'm just kind of saying that as just some little deeper understanding of the process, but also just want to say I'm so excited that you all are talking about doing this in Portland, taking this to Portland, set up, and have a lot of confidence that you will be very successful in doing this, because I see a lot of skill already in the people in this group. So
Thanks, Lou.
Thank you. I feel very grateful and excited.
Great, thanks, Lou. So this is the basic, sort of the core practice, like is shown in the slideshow that we do. Hopefully, we start connecting with ourselves. We get grounded. We start, getting past our fears, anxieties, and able to open up and work through our own, for our own well-being. It brings us together as a team, so we start getting to know each other better. With this basic skill, a lot of practice. Again, we can, when you go to the empathy tent, set up an empathy tent. We set up chairs and offer listening to people. This is all we do. We say, we have a card that says 5 minutes or 10 minutes of free listening. People come by, they sit down. This is the basic practice that we kind of start the ball rolling. We're able to, you become a facilitator of a circle yourself, like Lou facilitated the circle. You keep practicing this, and you can hold a circle in the empathy tent or anywhere. And then if it gets contentious, with a little bit of extra practice, the structure can hold quite a bit of conflict in it. And it's sort of the first step, kind of a gateway to, like Sam, you're talking about the family, I think, dynamics or constellation. Was that the family constellation work?
Family systems.
Family systems. So it's very similar. There's a lot of practices that use this basic foundational practice. We're doing 3-minute listening, but you can do the 10-minute listening. You're saying, willingness. Lou and I meet. We do half an hour each. Empathy buddy calls. So you can kind of expand it. So it's just basic. It's kind of the boot camp. It's sort of the boot camp for all these other practices. Just like, in the military, you can go in a lot of different directions, but everybody sort of starts with sort of this, not to use a military metaphor, but we're trying to get away from that, need a better metaphor, but it's the same kind of a concept in this first step. So we will meet again next week, and we'll start, with doing empathic listening. And we're here to support the creation of an empathy tent, being started in Portland, and we can all contribute in one way or another to that. And, you can let me know if you have some ideas on how to get started, other people, or, how do we get that ball rolling? But we'll just kind of start it, kind of meeting by meeting, getting to know each other, seeing what steps you like to do and what you kind of support your request, etc. So that is it. For this meeting then. Just want to keep us not too much over. So we'll see you next week, and thanks so much. I'm so grateful for everyone taking part.
Thank you
Bye,
so
everyone.
much.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.